Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's LinkedIn Live. I'm Julia Poger, and I'm a conference, business, and diplomatic interpreter. I work from Russian and French into English, and from English into Russian. And as you probably know, I also run a business called Know Your Worth, where I help interpreters and really any service professional to understand how to get your name out and sell your services so that you can get work at your fees and under your conditions. I'd love to see where you're all calling in from today or where you're all listening in from today. So please put it in the chat. And before we get started, I did want to just let you know that we're having a little bit of an issue with internet today. And the Ethernet cable is absolutely not working. Not to worry, I am recording this locally as well on my computer, which means that if there's a problem with the internet, I'll keep going. And you'll see this later on the YouTube channel. I hope that things will work out fine. Fingers crossed. So the other thing I wanted to say before we move into our topic today is that I'd like to ask you to stick around until the end of the show to find out what we'll be talking about in June and who with. So today's show is all about branding, which is a pretty hot topic. Anywhere I go, there are always questions. So I thought I might do a show dedicated just to this particular topic. And first of all, as I wrote in the description to the show, branding can bring in more recognition and higher fees. It can create customer loyalty and even raving fans. For example, water from the tap in Paris tastes exactly the same as water from the Evian bottle. In Paris, they work at it. What can we say? But of course, the Evian bottle costs a lot more than just turning on the tap. And quite frankly, I would always buy Evian, but I won't touch Vitel with a 10-foot bowl. I'm a brand loyalist. What can I say? A regular cute little t-shirt costs very little until a designer puts their name on it, and then the price skyrockets. So basically, let's get to what our topic is then, and that is what exactly, and let me put up my banner, what exactly is a brand? So a brand, and before I get to that, let me just say hi to those of you who have been saying hi from Brussels. Thank you. Oh my, from Velika Britannia. Well done, Ilana, from England, from the United Kingdom, actually. And congratulations to everybody who is celebrating the coronation today. Thank you for being here. If you're here on live, actually. Hello from Orléans and hello from Brussels. And hi, Zilin from China. Gosh, it's nice to see you again. And it's nice to see everybody here. So, okay, so what exactly is a brand? A brand is a promise. It's a promise that you will do something. So, for example, and I don't want to equate this with interpreters, but McDonald's is a brand. It's a very strong brand. Why? Because it makes a very strong promise. It makes this promise that wherever you go in the world, be it Wall Street, be it, East Podunk, anywhere, Moscow when it was open, France, Germany, anytime you walk into a McDonald's and you order a Big Mac, you will always get 2 all-beef patties, special sauce, lettuce, cheese, pickles, onions on a sesame seed bun. And yes, I did used to watch too much television. But that Big Mac is always made the exact same way. It doesn't matter where you go. And so the promise of that brand of McDonald's and of Big Macs is so strong that I have actually worked with people when we went to Moscow, and they were worried about the food that they would get in Russia because, of course, they were from some place where they'd never traveled before. They'd heard all sorts of horror stories, which were not true. And basically, they would get up an hour early just to go out to McDonald's for breakfast, even though we had a Hilton buffet breakfast in the lobby. and they would come back from whatever the workday was and go to McDonald's for dinner, so that they would always have something that was very familiar to them. It's one of the reasons the Hilton is such a strong brand, the Four Seasons, yay, and so on. Every one of those brands makes you a promise. And the brand making you that promise and living up to it becomes a strong brand. So that's what a brand is for things, also for services, since a hotel is a service. Okay. Now, you might know, you might not know, that the word brand actually originally came from the cowboys who would brand their livestock. They would brand the cattle to differentiate their cows from somebody else's cows. And then that word kind of stuck. And, I could see why. It's short, it's punchy, and then it kind of grew. So branding has now actually extended to people as well. And the problem is that too many people don't really understand what that might mean. I have to say that my banners are no longer working. Here we go. Here we go. They are working now. Okay. See, the internet is just very unstable at the moment. But anyway, so it's this promise that you are fulfilling. And when a brand extends to a personal brand, suddenly you become your brand. Now, this started back with Tom Peters, back in the dawn of time before the millennium. And it expanded throughout the 90s. And now everybody is considered to be a brand, a personal brand. Now, what does that mean? It basically means that anytime you promise to do something and you carry out that promise, you are known for that thing. So I used to know an interpreter back in Washington who basically was fantastic at medical. And so she was known as the medical interpreter. And it was, if you needed anybody to come in for a medical conference, she didn't even need to prepare. She was so good at medical that, she was the brand. And nobody else could be the medical interpreter. Somebody could have been the diabetes interpreter or, the MRI interpreter, but she was the one who was known for the umbrella term of medical interpreting. And so that was her brand. Did she create that brand? In a way, she created it by being really good at medical. And every time anybody asked her to do something medical, she was fantastic at it. She carried out that promise. So that's one way of branding yourself. Another way of branding yourself is to always choose something that you will talk about. So, for example, maybe you would be the interpreter who always talks about chess problems because you are a fan of chess. You're very good at it. You tutor people in it. You might even be master or grandmaster status. And so your posts could all be about chess problems that lead back to business problems or understanding or communication or interpreting or whatever. But you're always talking about chess problems. And that means that you would be known as, oh yeah, you're that chess interpreter. This holds for almost any business, quite frankly. I am on LinkedIn, obviously, since here I am. And I follow several people. Some are linguists. One is Sylvia Bitchik, as you might have heard in a couple of my presentations this year. And Sylvia, I would think, is known as the English to Polish translator, because she's always writing about translations and how they work and what might work for her clients. So her clients get educated by reading her posts. And I'll have something to say about that a little later in the show. Okay. If you turn to non-interpreting services and you look at Josh Brown, Josh Brown is somebody who constantly talks about sales techniques. He's constantly talking about cold calling. And I have to say that, the first 5 or 10 of his posts are super interesting. And some of the formats I like better than other formats, but they're super interesting. Now that I'm seeing his 500th post and he's saying the same kind of thing, I pretty much know what it is he's talking about. Now, he'll turn it on its head and he'll add something new for those of us who have read a lot of his posts, but I'm pretty sure what he's going to be talking about. So that's one way of branding yourself. Another way of branding yourself is something that I've done, which is kind of really lean into the red. As you can see, I wear red on these broadcasts anyway. I actually wear black and other colors, hot pink and blue and so on. I'm a winter, but I wear all sorts of colors when I'm not doing these. But when I'm here, I'm always going to wear red. And no matter what, I will always have red glasses. And in fact, so much so that I'm now wearing the computer glasses. We have the day-to-day glasses, and we have the replacement ones just in case one of them goes bluey. So here I am with all of my red glasses, all different shapes and sizes, but they're all there, and they're always going to be red. And there are reasons for that. But because of that, people now know me that way. And in fact, I just met somebody for the first time in person, and they picked me out because I was wearing my red glasses and a red top. So that's another way of branding yourself. So making sure that you choose something to make you stand out. And in my case, that's the glasses, I think. Anyway, so that's the beginning of what a brand is. Now, how do you combine building a brand with being authentic? Now, this is kind of important because authenticity is the watchword. If you want your clients to know, like, and trust you, you need to be authentic. Because if you're not authentic, they're not really knowing you, are they? They're not liking you, they're liking some persona. And what if you forget to be that person? Suddenly you're not the person they like, they feel betrayed, and they will never trust you again. So it's easiest to be authentic. If you're really interested in Star Trek, go for Star Trek. Tell people that you're interested in Star Trek. If you're really interested in, and I'm quite frankly, whenever I talk about communication, I'm always referencing the Star Trek The Next Generation episode of Darmok. And if you haven't seen it, I highly recommend that you do. It's brilliant. So yay, I'm so glad that I have somebody else who could be a red twin. So being authentic means not letting it all hang out, but giving a curated view of yourself. So for example, I wear all sorts of different colors, including a lot of black, but I'm curating myself on these shows by only ever putting on red in some way or another. I might have a red shirt with a black top over it, but in some way I will be wearing red. And so I've curated that. The fact is that you don't need to let your clients know everything about you. You don't need to tell them that you have 200 pairs of shoes. You don't need to say that you never get out of bed until whatever time. You don't need to say that you don't go to bed, that you don't go to sleep until a certain time. It's none of their business. However, if it has something to do with business, then you should say it. And in fact, if a client offline were to ask me, well, would it be okay if we start working at midnight your time? And I'm a late riser and a late night, I'm an owl. There we go. I'm an owl. Then that means that I could say, of course, midnight is not a problem for me. This is a time that I'm usually awake anyway. But if I'm not talking to a client, I'm not going to be putting it in a post. Okay, so that kind of thing. You want to curate. You don't want to have your vacation shots of you in a mankini holding some big cocktail with lots of umbrellas and flowers and stuff in your photograph. This is a little too much. Mankinis should be barred from LinkedIn. And in fact, they probably are because I've never seen one. But I'm just saying, you should be very careful about the things that you show. I never show, for example, my work. I never show where I'm working or the conference I'm at or my booth or anything like that. You can always count on me to have strict confidentiality. Now, let's pretend I'm working somewhere, let's say in Rome. That's exotic enough. And I might take a picture of the Colosseum. I might post that picture of the Colosseum so that you know that I'm in Rome. On the other hand, I won't post it on the day that I'm working. So I'm curating. I mean, there are a couple of reasons for that. One of them is that I don't need people to know when I'm not home, so they don't come and burgle the house. But apart from that, it's none of anybody's business what conference I'm actually working at and when. But that's me, and that's my brand. So the confidentiality is um, is paramount for me. And I'm so glad to hear that somebody agrees with me on the mankinis. I think you're right. So anyway, so this is how you balance building a brand with authenticity. You are completely authentic all the time. I'm making a bit of a fool of myself putting 3 pairs of glasses on at the same time. But I'm not showing you all sorts of other things. You know, you're not seeing that there might be a mess over here. There isn't. Or that there might be a mess over here. There's not. But, you know, I'm not showing any of these things. I'm showing you this picture of me. And that's how you build a brand and keep authenticity going. Now, parts of a brand could include a logo. And they do include, if you're on LinkedIn, it does include your tagline a bit. But it doesn't necessarily. So for example, I don't actually have a logo. I mean, Know Your Worth has this, but that's more of a seal, isn't it? It's not really a logo. And I'm not really using it absolutely everywhere. I use it when I need a picture of something so that it's not like a blank egg when it's my company for Know Your Worth. But I'm not really using it to say, oh, look at this. Here's how you're going to recognize Julia by this logo. No, there are interpreters who have logos, and I am really impressed with a lot of them. But I don't see any reason for you to waste your time or your money having a logo when, quite frankly, my logo is my name. And you know, you don't need to have one. If you want one, that's a separate issue, but you don't need to have one. A LinkedIn tagline, maybe. I mean, I change my tagline all the time. So for me, it's not so much of a brand as a real, it's like going under the brand to explain exactly whom you help, to do what, and how. Okay. So a LinkedIn tagline isn't really part of your brand, but while you're on LinkedIn, that tagline does follow you around. If you post on LinkedIn, if you comment on a post, if you do anything at all, that tagline just follows you everywhere. So in that sense, it could be a bit of a brand. But since you fiddle with it, and if you don't, you should, because you should be testing your tagline and seeing if you bring in more people with this tagline or more people with a different tagline. You know, when you do that, then, you know, it's changing all the time. Whereas the brand is much more something that's timeless. It's what's timeless about you. Okay. One of the things that I talk about in the Know Your Worth seminar is the car, a Nissan GTR. So the Nissan GTR, and I have to say that I don't know a lot about cars, but I am married to somebody who knows loads about them. So the Nissan GTR is like the car to have. It is faster than a Ferrari in the curves and a hell of a lot cheaper. It is a mechanical work of genius. They make the engine, you know, they mill all the parts, and then the engine is assembled in a clean room by a single person. And that person in the later years, not in the earlier years, would sign the engine. Now that is definitely something to be thought of as a brand. You know, oh my gosh. And, you know, when you open the engine, if you find that your model is too early to have been signed, you're going to be a bit gutted, aren't you? I mean, the car is still going to be pretty fantastic. But that car is really known for its road holding, for, you know, you tap on the gas pedal and you're going 100 miles an hour without even realizing it because the car is so stable. and especially in the corners. Now, I would love to be known as the Nissan GTR of interpreters. It's not necessarily a brand that I'm going for at the moment, but this is one way of choosing how you might want to build your brand. Think about the things that you like in other brands and see where it brings you. Okay, see where it brings you. So it's the timeless part of you. And I realize that all the interpreters do pretty much the same thing. I mean, we all ensure communication between two languages. We are all a bridge, for example. I mean, and bridge is the usual thing that we need to, that we think of when we think about the image of what interpreters are. But if we're all going to be a bridge, nobody's going to stand out. Remember, the whole point of having a brand is to be distinctive. Okay. I will get to your question because in just a moment, because it does go along very well with a couple of other ideas. So how do you build your brand? It's pretty much what I've been saying for the last few minutes. And building that brand is just choosing something that you want to be known for. The medical interpreter, the chess interpreter, the interpreter who shows up in red glasses, the Russian interpreter. That's me in the United States. I am a Russian interpreter because, of course, everybody has English. And so they identify you by your foreign language. Not by the booth that you're in, though in the United States, since almost all interpreting is biactive, I would be in the Russian booth, if you see what I mean. So, oh yes, the Russian interpreter with the red glasses. Okay, so that's me, and that's my brand. So you choose something, and then you really lean into it. When I first bought the red glasses, which were not this pair, this is like the third pair. When I bought the first pair, I liked it so much, and I really enjoyed so much the fact that people could recognize me easily on the street. If I'd never met them before, I'd say, we're meeting for coffee. Look for the person with the brightest red glasses you've ever seen. And they always walked up to me without any problem. I like that idea. And nowadays, the last time I was in the theater, somebody tapped me on the shoulder and said, "Are you Julia? I watched, whatever that you just recently did. I recognized you by your glasses," which is kind of fun, So I know other people who have chosen to wear orange sneakers, not interpreters, I hasten to add. I know somebody who is always the best dressed person in the room. And I know we all try, but it's very rare that we actually achieve it. And I know at least two people of opposite sexes who have achieved that really well. So, how do you build a brand? You choose the thing that you want to be known for. Okay. I'm a nuclear interpreter. Okay. I don't really push that anymore because nuclear is not like that massive, great a portion of my work anymore. But I used to do a lot of nuclear stuff when I lived in the United States. And so when I moved here, it was really rare to find anybody with so much experience dealing with both civil and military nuclear. And so here I was known as the person to be put into the International Energy Agency or into, some meeting of nuclear physicists and so on, just because I had all that experience that nobody else did. Okay, so for a short time, I was known as the nuclear interpreter. That was before the red glasses. So you figure something out. You figure out what you like about other brands, figure out what you want to stand out for among your peers. And this is not a matter of doing your peers down, okay? It's not a matter of doing your peers down. It's a matter of you standing out. Not once have you heard me say, that all of you people out there who don't wear red glasses are terrible interpreters. Okay, you just heard me say it, but I will never say it again because you're not. Okay, so the fact of you having red glasses does not make you a better interpreter or a worse interpreter. It just makes you stand out. Maybe you'll have blue glasses. Okay, have blue glasses. You don't want to be known as the Julia copycat, do you? Ha. Anyway, so This is how you build a brand, is you figure something out that you want to be known for, and then you really, really push it. You be consistent. You talk about it all the time. You wear it all the time. You do it all the time, whatever it is you need to do to make yourself stick in people's minds as always the same person. Okay. Now, I did get a question ahead of time. Is this something that you do yourself or do you subcontract it? That's because a lot of what you're doing on LinkedIn to build your brand is writing posts. And do you subcontract or do you write them yourself, for example? First of all, I would say that you can't subcontract something that you haven't built yet. If you do not yet have a voice, if you don't have a color, if you don't have an attitude or an idea that is different from everybody else already, if you contract it out or subcontract it out, they're not going to have anything to work with. And you'll just have bland, boring, kind of chat GPT style of messaging. So first of all, you need to do the work. You need to pick your subject, your color, your font, your whatever. I mean, the red that I'm using here is the same red that I use on my Know Your Worth and on my Julia Poger websites. Okay, so the red stays the same across all three places. So I chose that color. Do I want a serif or a sans serif font? I prefer sans serif. Do you want, do you want to talk about business or do you want to talk about chess? I know very little about chess. I will talk about business. Whatever it is, I have to build that first. After I've done that, after I've had several, many posts so that somebody can analyze them, I could subcontract. I don't think I will, because I do realize that while people say, oh, yes, we can match your voice pretty well, I'm not sure that they would be able to match the way that I approach things really. I think I'd have to do a lot of post editing. On the other hand, if you find that a specific type of post is doing well for you, make it into a template. So for example, and I'm noticing that it's 4:27 at the moment. I'm happy to stick around and answer any of your questions. This is a bigger topic than our usual, 30-minute one. So I might take an extra 5 minutes or so. I hope you don't mind. Anyway, so I found a post that I wrote that got me 7,000 views and tons of engagement. I think my engagement was somewhere above, somewhere around 10%, which is huge. And, because when you talk to somebody who's out there ghostwriting for other people, I mean, 3.5% is huge on engagement. So this one post got me 10%. It was a post for the Cambridge Conference Interpretation course. We were packing everything up to go over to England, and it was basically a pile of sealed boxes, right? And so I took a picture and I said, guess what's in the box? Only those of you who are coming this summer, or those of you who have come in the past, will either find out in the future or already know what's in the box. And don't tell anyone. And that got so much engagement because, of course, all of our past students were going, you're going to have so much fun, or I can guess what's in there, or whatever. And the new people were saying, oh, I can't wait to see what's in there, and I can't wait to see what you're going to bring and what lies ahead. So that was a fantastic post. So I did it again the next year, and I got just as much engagement. And then I realized that some of it might be looking at behind the scenes, not just me from here, or, the perfect course or whatever, but how we get prepared for something. So during lockdown, Chris and I had our headshots done. So we had a second set of headshots done by a wonderful photographer who had figured out a way of taking over our camera. And then, you put your camera up against a can of soup, and you attach it somehow, and then you move it around the house, and then she takes pictures. In fact, if you see the couple of pictures that I put up of Chris and myself with this background on LinkedIn, those were those pictures. And so I posted one post of 2 shots, one of the behind the scenes shot with the can on top of a pile of books on top of an ironing board outside in our porch, and the second one being the finished shot of me going like this. And that got huge amounts of engagement again. So anytime I do something from behind the scenes, for me, that template brings me lots of engagement. So you figure out what things bring you the most engagement and then try and make it into a template. And that works very easily. The other thing that you can do if you're leery of subcontracting is batch writing. So when you're planning on doing LinkedIn, and let's say you want to do a post a day or a post a week, a post a week is already a lot, but let's pretend you want to do a post a day. You wouldn't write a post today and then post it today, because who knows when you'd get around to it, what time it would be. Maybe you're in the booth, maybe you're working, maybe you're doing something else. That's not a good look. It's not good for you, and it's not good for your clients. So what you do is you sit down one day, like on Sunday, you give yourself 2 hours and you write 5 posts, and then you schedule them. LinkedIn has a way of scheduling the posts so that it's like sending an email at 8 a.m. Monday, when there's no way you're going to be near your computer at 8 a.m. Monday. It's the same thing for LinkedIn. You can do it natively within LinkedIn and schedule that post for every day at 8 a.m. or every day at noon or whatever. And so that means you don't have to think about it again for the rest of the week. Now, you might even want to write, 10 or 20 posts all at the same time, just to have them in your pocket. And then maybe you'll write one that's more topical, like today was the coronation. So maybe you will have wanted to write something about the coronation specifically for today, and you thought of it today or yesterday or whatever. So then you can insert it in there and move the other posts, which are more evergreen. That is, they aren't tied to something very topical, very much of the moment. And you can move them to whenever you want. So batch writing works really, really well. Okay. Let's just double check that there are no extra comments other than Vika says yes. Okay, good. So here we go. Are there any no-nos to building a brand? And I think that might go along with, very nicely, with Vika's question, which are the major mistakes we should avoid in branding? So the biggest no-no, the most amazing no-no, is inauthenticity. Okay? Don't try and be somebody you're not. Don't try and be this polished British gentleman when you are oh so obviously an American from the East Coast. Don't try and be somebody you're not, because you can't keep it up all the time. And then what happens if a client hires you because they liked the persona that you put out on LinkedIn, and then they get you and you show up at their place of work and you're not dressed the way that you are on LinkedIn, you're not behaving the way that it looked like you would behave on LinkedIn, and suddenly you're creating distrust and mistrust rather than actual trust. So don't be inauthentic. Make sure that whatever you say, you actually believe and you actually think. If you don't think it and you don't believe it, don't say it. That's the biggest no-no. The second biggest no-no is that mankini that we talked about already, and that is letting too much hang out. You really don't want to be, I don't know, doing gymnastics or something and have pictures of you in these amazing outfits, and putting, crotch shots of you doing some bizarre split thing on your business profile, right? So you don't want to let everything hang out. Make sure that your brand is very much curated. I mean, part of my brand, I think, at least part of the know your worth side of it, is that, while I have things to tell you, I try and tell them to you in an engaging and an interesting way, and maybe even just a little bit of fun. And so putting 3 sets of glasses on might be part of that brand. I'm hoping so. So that would be your biggest no-no. inauthenticity and letting things hang out. So don't do those. The other thing that you might want to remember is you have to be consistent. So inconsistency is a major mistake as well. If today you're posting everything on chess and tomorrow you're posting everything on medical, everybody's going to think, oh, well, he just interprets or she just interprets, whatever. And there's nothing that lets you stand out. So whatever you're doing needs to make you stand out in some way. And the only way that it can do that is by you doing it all the time. I mean, I've been wearing red glasses now, I can't even remember how long, at least 10 years, maybe 12 or 15 years by now. And it took me, 4 or 5 years before people started saying, oh yeah, you must be Julia, in groups where they should have known me, because they would have seen me online. So, whatever it is, it will take a while. And whatever you are doing, don't just stop it if you see that it's not working in 6 weeks, because whatever it is, this is not a sprint. This is a marathon. This will take you a while. I would definitely test anything that you're doing for a minimum of 3 months. And if it's really, if it looks like it's really, really bad on day 1, just take it away immediately. That's fine. Be inconsistent, then it's good. But if you're testing something and you want really a good amount of results to know, to base your decisions on for the future, it needs to be at least 3 months, maybe 6. And then you can change something and test it for another 3 months or 6 or whatever, and see which one is better for you and which one brings you in more clients and so on. Right now, my tagline on LinkedIn is my latest version. It's been up for about 3 months, and I got more engagement from that than I have from any of my taglines before. So this is good. I might still tweak it a little bit more, but I think I'll keep the business conference and diplomatic interpreter part up, because that is what makes me stand out. It's one of the things that makes me stand out. I realize it's not so much of a standout anymore because some of you are copying it, but that's fine. I don't mind, because it's on LinkedIn and it's an open forum. Okay, so that was the no-nos. Now let's see what else. What other questions did I have from beforehand? Okay, does anybody have any questions? Because I've gotten to the last question that I had from before we started the live, and Vikas has asked his question. Other than that, if there are no other comments or no other questions, I will move to our announcements. And in fact, why don't I just move to the announcements anyway? And if there's a burning question somebody has, I can answer it just before we go. So our announcements afterwards. So the first thing I wanted to let you know is that our next show will be on June 6th at 4 p.m. And it will be an AMA with a special guest and somebody that you will have heard of even just today, and as well as during other particular presentations that I've had, and that is Sylvia Bichik. Sylvia is a fantastic person to talk to on content creation for linguists. She is a translator. She's a Polish translator who works from English and possibly soon from Portuguese, who knows. But Sylvia lives in Warsaw and has been creating content about her translations for several years. We met during COVID in lockdown on a class, and I've been really impressed with the kinds of posts that she's put forward and the kinds of engagement she gets. So I'd really like you to learn something about how you can create content from, for linguists specifically. Other than that, let's see. So we will focus on creating content for linguists and send in your questions ahead of time. And along with that, I'd like to let you know about some opportunities for continuing professional development. The Cambridge Conference Interpretation course is now open for enrollment. Our working languages this year are English, French, German, Italian, Russian, and Spanish. If you're interested, please write to us as soon as you can. We only have three places left, and some languages have a waiting list. But who knows? Somebody may have to back out, and somebody on the waiting list will get to come. You can find out more at cciconline.net, and I'll definitely put that in the comments below. I will also be presenting a webinar for the American Translators Association this Wednesday, May 10th, at noon Eastern Daylight Time, or Eastern Daylight Time, I guess. I guess we're on daylight. Anyway, noon New York time, or 6 p.m. my time, that is Brussels. And this webinar will be on ethics in remote interpreting. I'll put the registration link in the chat below this, here on LinkedIn and on YouTube. And my sweetheart, Chris, will also be presenting a webinar for the ATA on Wednesday, May 31st at noon their time, noon New York time, or 6 p.m. Brussels time, on whisper interpreting and using tour guide systems. And I'll put the link to register to his webinar also below the this recording on YouTube and in LinkedIn. So it looks like there aren't any other questions, and it's really nice to know that there were some good tips here and that you have found it interesting, if not insightful. So our top tip for today, and I'm sure that you can already figure out what it is because I've said it 6 times already, but hey, choose what you want to be known for and be consistent. So this is, I'm being consistent. I'm telling you consistently to be consistent. So whatever it is you do, figure out how you want to be known and make sure that you let people know what that is and do it consistently all the time. Bang on about it if you have to. And people will sooner or later figure it out for you. Okay, I think that's probably about it from me. I'm sorry I did go a little bit longer than I wanted to. Thank you so much for coming today. Thank you for watching this on replay. You can, if you'd like to rewatch it, you can come back to this event and find it here on LinkedIn. You can go to the Know Your Worth YouTube channel, and I'll post the playlist for all of my LinkedIn Lives below this one on on YouTube as well as here on LinkedIn. And thank you so much for sending in your questions and putting the one question anyway in the comment. I always like it when we have a bit of a give and take. So I'll see you next month with Sylvia Bichik talking about content creating for linguists. For any of your internet posts, it could be on Facebook, it could be on LinkedIn, though Sylvia and I are both more LinkedIn fans than anything. I think that's about it. And thank you so much for coming and for being part of the LinkedIn Live today.